Hello, a really warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining this webinar about social media. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Delighted that you could make it. I'm very pleased to say that this webinar is being hosted by our Younger Members Council, and I'd like to say a really big thank you to them for giving up their time to pass on their thoughts and their knowledge on this important topic. My name is Martin Fothergill and I head up the membership and branches team at the Nautical Institute. Before we get going, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Nautical Institute. I'm conscious that many of you will be members, but there will be some of you who aren't members. We started in 1972 and we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. We're an international professional body. We have over now 9,500 members. We're growing. Those members are based all around the world and from different disciplines within maritime. We also have 55 branches around the world. Our focus is on helping our members to grow their knowledge, grow their skills, and grow their expertise. We also give members a voice at the IMO and other industry bodies such as IALA. We have a number of strings to our bow as an institute. We host technical webinars. We produce a number of publications. We have our monthly Seaways publication, which all members receive, but we also produce the Navigator magazine 3 times a year, which is a free magazine designed to inspire young marine navigators. We publish a range of highly acclaimed practical guides, and it's all about sharing best practice, focusing on safety and professionalism. And all of that leads to, we believe, better decision making. So if you're not already a member, please do go on our website, have a look at the many benefits you get. There's also a handout as part of this webinar where you can download our membership brochure, Upgrade Your Future. So please do take a look and see what membership could mean for you in terms of your own professional development. Social media, that's the topic for today. It's now ubiquitous. It provides many opportunities to communicate, to interact, but there are also a few pitfalls as well, as I'm sure we're all aware. As maritime professionals, there's also the question, how can we use it to advance our careers and progress? So all these topics will be discussed, and they will be discussed by people who've grown up with social media. Social media wasn't really around when I was younger, and I don't feel best qualified to comment on it. So the people that I'm surrounded by here today, I'm sure will do a much better job. Your mic and your video aren't active, but what you can do is type in a question and hit send. Please do this because we're really keen to get your feedback. We want to hear about your experience of using social media and also your ideas as well. Nobody's got a monopoly on good ideas. So please do take advantage of it because you really value your thoughts and opinions and want to hear about your experiences. And the panel, I'm sure, will answer as many of the questions as they can. They will also be running a few polls. So it's another way for us to engage with you and get your feedback. After the webinar, you'll be invited to take a short survey. We'd be really grateful if you could complete this. Just let us know how you feel the webinar went. What did you like about it, and what do you feel we could improve for the future? So thank you in advance for that. You're not alone. We've had a large number register for the webinar, so if you can keep your questions nice and succinct, that would be great, so we can get through as many of them as possible. After the webinar, you'll also receive a certificate of attendance. This is a professional development certificate that you can keep as part of your continuing professional development records. And finally, the webinar will be shared, a recording of the webinar will be shared on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch it again. And if you have friends and colleagues that couldn't make it today, please do let them know that it's available on YouTube, because they may well want to watch it. You can engage with the Nautical Institute through our own social media channels. To find these, all you need to do is go to our website and scroll to the bottom of any page, and you'll see our social media icons listed there. We're on all the usual platforms, you know, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. So please do engage with us and join the discussion. It gives me great pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Mr. James Edwards, M&I. James is a master mariner with over 10 years seagoing experience. He's sailed on numerous types of vessels, including cruise, container, RoPax, and bulk cargo. He's now working as a specialist maritime support officer for MSC, and in his spare time, he's very generously the vice chair of the Younger Members Council. So a huge thank you, James, for your help, and to everybody on the panel for your help in organising today's webinar. So I'll pass the baton on to you. Thank you, James.
Well, thank you, Martin, for that introduction, and good afternoon or morning or evening to wherever you are in the world. It really is fantastic to have so many people joining us from around the world. I think that is one of the advantages of the Nautical Institute. Through being a member of the NI, I've met many different people from all over the world with whom we have shared similar goals, and it allows us to share our similarities and differences on both an international and national level, and hopefully try to influence some of the conversations within the wider maritime industry. This webinar will be the Younger Members Council's third webinar so far. The Younger Members Council is a group of younger mariners under the age of 35 who have applied and have been appointed by the NI. And as I said before, we are trying to direct and start conversations within the industry using our experience and knowledge. And one of the ways we're doing this is through webinars, as well as frequent Seaways articles, which you may have seen frequently published. So the aim of this webinar is to discuss social media in general, how it can be used to help find work, and its pros and cons. So without further ado, let me introduce the panelists. First of all, we have Mr. Cameron Livingstone. Cameron is an experienced maritime professional who is passionate about the sea, the law, human relationships, and finding workable solutions to maritime and marine casualties. He has more than 10 years at sea aboard both commercial and naval vessels, and he recently transitioned into maritime law and marine insurance. So Cameron, if you'd like to introduce yourself, good morning.
Yeah, sure, James, thank you very much, and thanks for a good introduction. That's exactly right. After I had a career at sea in both the commercial and the naval sectors, I went back and did my law degree and moved into maritime law, and I currently work for GUARD, the P&I club.
Excellent, thank you for that. Next is Miss Emily Bull. She is recently graduated, or in 2016, so not that recent anymore, from United States Merchant Marine Academy with a Bachelor of Science in Logistics and Intermodal Transportation. Since then, she's gone on to become a deck officer for American Maritime Officers, where she continues to work. And at the beginning of 2022, Emily became Chief Officer of Navigation for Mercy Ships, which is a charitable organisation, Sail Around Africa, offering assistance to those in need. But I'm sure, Emily, you can do a better job of explaining it than myself, so please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm tuning in from Seattle, Washington, so it's a very wee morning here. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this webinar. My name is Emily Bull, as he mentioned, and I'm currently the Chief Officer of Africa Mercy, which is a hospital ship doing various surgeries and missions throughout Africa. And I've done 3 voyages with them thus far, and it's been pretty good pretty good journey.
Excellent, thank you for that, Emily. And last but not least, we have Mr. Wyron Bernard, who has more than 5 years experience on international seagoing vessels, dry bulk, general, heavy lift, oil and chemical tankers, a licensed merchant marine navigational officer. As a seafarer, he strongly advocates for what he calls the 5 S's of shipping, which are safe, secure, sustainable, smart, and inclusive. So, Wyron, without further ado, would you like to introduce yourself a bit more?
Thank you very much, Jamie. So I'm Wyron Bernard Sabanal Balines. I'm tuning in from the Philippines, and my last contract was as a 3rd officer. Outside of my professional work experience, I also serve for the Nautical Institute, the Royal Institute of Navigation, and well, as one of the Goodwill Maritime Ambassadors for the IMO. Right now, I'm one of the owner's representative, shifting to the shore base. So lovely meeting you, everyone.
Excellent, thank you, Wyron, for that introduction. I think, as you can see, we've got a breadth of knowledge and experience in both shore and seagoing, which hopefully will help us create an interesting webinar for you. So without further ado, let's begin the questions. So number 3, this is directed to you, Wyron. Do you think social media has helped you whilst at sea? Do you use it to connect with individuals or to your followers?
Yes, Jamie, it certainly did help while I was at sea because let's face it, it's commonly the perk of becoming a seafarer to see the world for free. Well, not everyone has had that perk, especially for our families ashore. By posting it on social media, we are able to bring them with us, together with our followers. But it's a caveat emptor. We have to also be aware about the security threats that it may actually pose, especially if we're carrying sensitive cargoes that we don't want to know where actually we're at. But we have marine traffic and other AIS devices for that one. So social media is a great tool if we're able to use it directly, especially on showing the younger generation on marketing it as a noble profession. Thank you.
Excellent. Cameron and Emily, do you have anything to add?
That's a very good summary. I didn't use social media very much while I was at sea. I sort of more used it as a tool to facilitate a career transition, so I used it much more ashore. I think the main thing, using it at sea, you can really use it to your advantage because as seagoing crew, your job is actually quite interesting to the rest of the world. I think that's what we lose sight of, that using social media to sort of show the world what you do is a really powerful tool, and I would encourage people to use that to your advantage.
I think you make an interesting point there, Cameron, about how it's developed so quickly. In the space of maybe 10 years, it's gone from not being used at sea to being quite an important pillar that people look out for as well. So it's certainly an interesting development that we've seen in a relatively short space of time. Emily, do you have anything to add?
No, I think Ren did a really good job, but also, you know, especially for younger people when they're starting out in this career, like cadets, you know, it can be a big thing to go to sea and have the isolation that this industry used to be, right? Now it's like I'm not disconnected from my friends and family. I'm just going on this adventure, and I think that that makes the industry more palpable and welcoming as the newer generation is joining the industry.
Excellent, thank you. So my next question again would be more probably based at Wyron on how has social media influenced your decision to work at sea, being a sort of a relatively younger seafarer?
Right, actually, for my end, I've been very much open that my decision of becoming a seafarer is more on my family's push. So, but as time progresses, I noticed how powerful, how wonderful, how storytelling, how you can use social media as a powerful storytelling tool of documenting your journeys. We saw the rise of TikTok, of Facebook at first, and then we now have TikTok social media influencers. They're very proficient when it comes to editing the transitions. Here in the Philippines, it's actually we are having this social media influencers hub, wherein the maritime journalists, along with the social media influencers, are tying up together just so that they can actually boost further the maritime industry. So it's helpful in a sense that if the things that's being said is not only the reality of seafaring, because well, in the academy it's almost always the case that we're saying it's a good profession but without the realities. So that's one thing.
Excellent. Cameron, Emily, do you have anything to add on that?
No, that's a great summary. I know that there is quite a bit of evidence to suggest that good levels of connection on board, good connections back to home, is shown to increase crew retention, staff retention. So it's a good consideration for companies to have too. So if there are any employers listening in, I would encourage you to take heed of that.
So that brings me on to a question of, would you be influenced by a company's social media policy or its internet policy when you're looking for jobs, shall we say?
Yeah, I think that's a poll question. I think we can reach out to the audience and see what they think. But I've noticed anecdotally and in my experience, mariners are choosing ships that have Wi-Fi, ships that have Starlink. You know, you see more and more recently that ships are bringing Wi-Fi and internet to their crew. And I think that is a good way to bring this industry forward into the modern day. Feel free, as you can see on your screen, to answer these poll question. Does having a good internet policy, price structure, impact your decision making on working for that shipping company? I've noticed in various unions in the United States that contracts that have Wi-Fi are more likely to get mariners to sign up. You know, it's beginning to be a bigger ask to be on a ship, and it's beginning to be more unacceptable shoreside to not have internet. And so I think that I'd be interested to see your all's votes to this question. For me, I think having internet on board or social media helps you feel connected, and I think that it helps increase people's mental health potentially on board, or, you know, whether or not that there's, yeah, as we can see, 87% yes, 13% no, and I think that that's reflected among pretty much mariners I talk to at any age as well. Back to you, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you for that, Emily. And yes, the poll was certainly interesting. 87% is quite a significant amount of people choosing to have that as part of their sort of compensation. But I think it's interesting as well how the price structure is important. I think it varies so heavily on ships. Even in the cruise industry, it can vary in, you know, tens of dollars to single dollars. And if you're working for 3 or 4 months or even longer, that can suddenly eat up a huge amount of your wages. So I think it's important. I know regulations are being brought in. MLC is looking at creating sort of a standardized internet compensation package, shall we say, making it, you know, regulatorily required, shall we say. But Warren or Cameron, do you have anything to add regarding this?
Warren, look, I would say I wrote something about this online recently, but the ability to send letters home, this back in the 1700s, the ability to send letters home when you arrived at a port was like a basic right of seafarers. It was a basic expectation. I don't see internet as radically different. So I see this as a basic expectation on board modern ships now.
Yeah.
Let me weigh in on that one. Thank you very much for the input. Yes, actually, I've seen one where there was a post on this that a cadet is actually requesting for a ship, asking actually during the preliminary interviews if that particular ship has had an internet. And somehow it's becoming the determining factor for a younger generation, for them to be attracted and retained on a shipping company. But we also have to look at the other side. As for the shipping companies, how are they branding themselves when it comes to social media? Because let's face it, most common than not, we are no longer, well, at least hey, I can speak for myself. I'm searching in Facebook. How does this company interact when it comes to their social media? Are they active? Somehow it also becomes a gauge if this particular shipping company or companies outside of the maritime industry is actually legit, or are they caring for their crew as to how they are interacting in social media.
Excellent, thank you, Warren, for that. So that sort of leads me on to jobs and sort of looking for work. So I'll lead with this question. Has social media ever helped you get a job, whether that's at sea or ashore? And have you ever recruited someone or been recruited through social media? Cameron, would you like to start this one off?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Jamie. I can answer that unequivocally. Yes, I have found jobs through social media. I think it's a very powerful tool for doing that. So this was not only a traditional sort of paid employment role, but I've been invited to undertake a lot of different projects through social media. I think it's a very powerful tool to project your own expertise. I would say I can think back to one particular experience, and so it's unfair to expect that someone would just reach out to you over LinkedIn and offer you a job cold. I don't think it will be like that. What happened for me personally was a person from my past had seen me posting things online. They got in contact and said, hey, I see you're doing your law degree. I actually work in a law firm. Perhaps I can put you in touch. And I won't break anyone's anonymity, but one thing led to another, and I was offered a job through that stream. So it won't come, I doubt it will come as just a cold job offer, but it can put you in contact with people around the world who can make those connections for you.
So you mentioned there, Cameron, about things you posted online. What sort of things were you posting that you felt helped you get that job or that contact, should we say?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different facets to this question, but basically what I would really recommend is pick the niche or pick your area of expertise and project yourself as as an expert commentator in some sort of field. So perhaps it could be seafaring in general as a big broad industry, or perhaps you have a lot of experience on LNG, for example. If you can position yourself as a source of expertise on LNG, write things that people can learn from. Write these on LinkedIn, give people a chance to learn from what you're saying, and you will gather a lot of credibility quite quickly. There's a lot that I can say. I think we come to this later in the webinar. There's a lot of technical detail which we don't have time to discuss today, but just position yourself as a source of expertise on your given field.
Excellent, thank you for that. Emily or Warren, do you have anything to add regarding sort of being recruited on social media? Emily, I saw your hand.
So I think the best way to think about LinkedIn is that it's your digital resume at this point. I think, you have to know which platform you're using and what is its intent. So things like TikTok or Instagram or Facebook kind of do what you want, that's your life. But LinkedIn specifically is professional. It is your digital resume. So the same advice I'm going to give here today is what I gave last week at the Women Offshore conference, and keep it up to date. If you sign on with a new company or a new ship, or you get promoted, just add it into your work history. And if you ever go to a conference or you're at a webinar and you talk to someone, you met someone, add them to your LinkedIn networking profile. It's more of a networking circle, but as Cameron mentioned, that's what leads you to the jobs. And I discovered in the conference that I used LinkedIn, met someone from a particular shipping company, which I won't say. And then he came back to me and he's like, oh, I sent your LinkedIn to the office. They liked your resume. Let's talk further. So I think it's your introduction. It's your digital introduction. And I think it helps you reach across various companies. So keeping it up to date, keeping it professional. It's not really a place to make a lot of posts. I definitely also would stray away from any sort of controversial topics or anything like that. But it is your digital resume, and it's a way to put yourself out there. And I've used it to get a job, and I've used it for recruiting, and it helps you stay plugged in with the industry, I think.
Excellent, thank you for that. Before we talk about the poll results, Wyron, you're quite active on LinkedIn as a follower of yours. So would you like to discuss how you use LinkedIn to your best advantage?
All right, thank you very much. So let me just comment first. Those are actually good practices, Emily and Cameron. For my end, and as I have noticed coming from the Philippines, younger cadets or even people outside of the maritime industry are not very much immersed in LinkedIn. One of the key feedback that they told me is that it's too bragging, they said, or they just don't know how to post, or it's too technical. There's just so much people highfalutin and things like that, that they don't want to get involved on it. So for my end, I told them, similar for you, it's your digital resume. So and actually it's helping them in a sense that they have to post what also they are doing, their speakership. And another key thing that probably has not been mentioned is, do not be afraid to ask for recommendations, because actually it's a helpful tool. Well, probably from your professors, from your previous instructors, your previous superiors. What's the worst that can happen? Them asking, telling you no, or probably you will probably have a good recommendation from them. And when there are other people who's going to visit your profile, you will have a word of mouth, so to speak. That's one thing that Cameron don't want to dwell with the technical details. So another one is about the endorsements. Put the skill sets that are actually related to your profession. He was discussing about the niche. So for us, I was a campus journalist before I became a seafarer. So writing articles is second nature to me. Probably you're also into sports, although it's not directly related to the maritime industry, but being kinesthetic is one thing. That's manual labor, they say, is the maritime industry. So put sports coaching there if there is. Another probably best practice that I have adopted is just having your name out there, because they cannot find you if you're outside. I hope I'm making sense on what I'm saying. So I think those are just some best practices from my end.
No, that was loud and clear. Emily, did you want to make a quick point?
I would say, I think in the 2023, I think it's important to have a LinkedIn profile, even if you're inactive. All you have to do, in my experience, is just, if you get a new job, you just add it to your resume and you have a profile, and you have your network. You shouldn't feel pressured that you have to post. Like, in fact, I never post. I think I've maybe made 2 in all the years I've sailing. Like, for me, it's just, this is a professional platform and that's it. And that's enough. You don't have to feel like you have to engage or be this super professional online. It's like, no, I'm a third mate looking for work. Who might I know? And it just kind of helps you start the conversation better, and that's a good place to start.
Can I jump in on that one?
Yes, go ahead.
Because recently there was this post proliferating in social media that LinkedIn is becoming more of a Tinder, that people who's actually funny as you may find it, because well, after all, you've already listed your accomplishments there. Well, Tinder, you're going to swipe left and right, depends on the pictures, but it's becoming more of a Tinder profile date. But what I think we're trying to say here is branding yourself as a professional. There are different social media tools for different intents and purposes. LinkedIn may not probably be the best one for dating.
Yeah, thank you for that one. And it's interesting looking at the poll results. I think it was 70% said no to being recruited on LinkedIn. So perhaps there's a geographical variation, because in the UK at least, lots of agency work is posted on LinkedIn. If you follow recruiters, they often put short notice jobs. So if you are looking for that stamp your discharge book, it can be worthwhile. And if they're really desperate, they can search for those skills that you talked about, Warren, and they may approach you on the messaging platform that they have built in. So it is so important to update, as we said. But I think as well, as a final point, it's important that it's used professionally. Keep your sort of the chaos of your personal life on Facebook, private or whatever, but keep LinkedIn because it is public. They can search your name. If they search James Edwards M&I, they will find me, and the good and the bad that comes with that. So do treat it with caution, and sort of what you would say to your boss is probably a good place to sort of just leave it there. So thank you guys for that. That was very interesting. My next question is sort of moving on to social media in general. I think that was some good advice regarding finding jobs. But what are the positives of social media in general? Do you find there are positives of working at sea and social media? It opens the floor.
I'll let someone else answer first, but my expertise is far more using social media for a career transition. So I'll let the others answer first, but I can make a point on this later.
I feel like, you know, social media is a tool, and if you view and use it as such, it can be, you know, really helpful, right? So when I first started out in 2012 as a cadet, you know, we had Instagram and Facebook, and you know, now I have a network of maritime friends and my family who I can talk to, and that became really paramount. Like I had a really dark time on my ship, and things weren't going well at home, and you know, the ship had an accident on board, and I was really pleasantly surprised that I had a network of mariners who knew about the situation and, you know, were able to give me support, like real time support. And you no longer have to keep some of that stuff to yourself, and you no longer have to wait till you're in port. And I was really surprised to find such a network and such a support at sea. But also, you know, you can keep in touch with friends and family and just tell them like, oh, hey, like I've arrived in this cool place. Because what we do is, it's cool. Like, you know, I think we spend a lot of time saying like, oh, this industry is hard, but it is also so cool, and you get to share it. And you know, and I've also used other platforms to get a job, like, oh, hey, I'm on this ship, I'm the third mate, I'm the chief mate, I need a relief, you know, December 15th or whatever it is. And then, oh, shoot, you know, this ship needs a chief mate, I'm going to apply. And lo and behold, now your friend has a relief. So, and I think that's also really helpful. So.
Excellent, thank you. Warren, do you have anything to add there?
I think for me, the summary will be what you don't want your employers to see. You probably better not putting it on your LinkedIn or your other social media profile, unless you can block them, right? So other thing that I wanted to point out when it comes to social media is that it's powerful. We've established that one, but also it helps you find your purpose. For instance, in TikTok, I've seen several people who were able to divert their careers outside of seafaring. They were able to be brand ambassadors or even advertisers, adverti brands and other corporates are able to tap them just so that their huge following can benefit from that. And also, we've been big on telling about maritime industry as a good profession. What better way is there than putting the maritime industry in the social media? But I think that's just for me.
Okay, so do you feel, as well as the negatives, do you feel that social media is an accurate portrayal of a life at sea? Like if you look at Instagram, you'll see these beautiful sunsets, you know, people in brand new boiler suits on the bridge with all the best equipment. Do you find that's an accurate representation?
I think that's kind of with anything in life, right? Like the big critique of social media is that everyone portrays their best self, and that's not necessarily always the truth, right? So if we're talking about the maritime profession, you know, you're going to see videos of sunsets and the pilot up the pilot ladder, and you know, this is me on the bridge navigating, and this is me in the engine room, like doing a piston pull, lifting up this big huge piece of equipment. And you know, it's just like it portrays a really cool profession, and I think that helps get mariners to sign up to this industry for sure. But
Okay, yeah.
it also doesn't highlight that this industry is hard and that there are struggles, and that because it's not really shown on social media, no, it's not necessarily an accurate portrayal because it's not always positive. In fact, sometimes this industry is really hard and there's no denying that whatsoever, right?
Yeah, I feel there's a lot of things that are not quite so glamorous that wouldn't make it to the Instagram feed. And I think that's telling of that 80% sort of disagreeing and saying that it's not an accurate portrayal. So what advice would you have to someone that's looking at joining the industry, but seeing all these fancy sunsets, you know, all this cool stuff? What would you say to them if they were interested in a career at sea? Warren, would you like to take this as probably the most recent sort of entry into the maritime industry?
Right, sure. For me, actually, let's just dissect more on the is it an accurate portrayal? Because as I see it, depends on what echo chamber. Because in social media, there are these echo chambers, they say. There are probably people who's just posting the positive sides of seafaring, whereas others, there are groups in, for instance, Aripamers, pilot ladders. There are people there who are posting about the dangers of pilot ladders being not properly rigged. So there are also people who are portraying the maritime industry as a dangerous one. You just have to find which ones. On your question, how will I advise the young cadets on social media? Probably from the top of my head. This is a hard question. All right, can you just go back for me on that one while I gather
No
my
problem.
thoughts?
Yeah, Emily, would you like to step in?
I think honesty is just a really important part, right? I can't promote something and then know what the challenges a person might face in their life and not tell them. And you have a responsibility to say, these are the hardships that you might face, and so that this person can make an informed decision about their career. This is an investment. This is an investment in yourself, of time, of hard work. I think it's an investment in some ways that aren't required of other careers. So if people ask you like, oh, hey, I'm interested, I'm about to join as a cadet, right? You can pull your professors aside, or or I want to be an AB, or like it's still your first ship, and you can talk to the officers there. Like, that's my job, is to say, hey, here's where you can improve. Here's what you're taking on. I believe that you can do this profession, but I owe it to you to be honest about some of the struggles that I've had, or persevere, or what I've overcome, because chances are, like, you're going to face these same things, and you just have to be honest, whether that's a Zoom call or phone call or in person. You just have to be honest.
I think it's important sorry, Warren, it's important to say, you talk about posting negative sides on social media. I think it's important that you are aware of your company's social media policy, because you may find yourself in grounds for, gross dismissal or, misconduct. So, and that's probably why you find there's more positive, because that's great for the company, whereas showing those negatives is more sort of dangerous, shall we say, for your career. So I would say do look at your company's social media policy before you do go and post negatives. Cameron, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'd go back to something I said before, and with full respect to everyone's social media company policies, and I'm not advocating disobeying those, but remember that what you do at sea is actually quite interesting to the rest of the world. They just don't see this kind of job. They are interested in the good, the bad, and the ugly. Don't limit yourself to sunsets and pina coladas. People are interested in the hard times as well. And so I'm not saying post anything which reflects poorly on the company, but what you do in the hard times equally as interesting to the rest of the world as what you do in the good times. The other thing that I'd quickly say, and this is coming from the perspective of trying to make a career transition, sort of trying to make a name for yourself, you can use what you post to demonstrate expertise in a particular thing, if you so desire. If you wanted to say move from a deck position into an engineering field, perhaps you can use what you post about what you do on board in an engineering context to start to show the world that you're an engineering professional, something like that. a lot of the criticism that social media gets, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, by the way, the criticism social media gets is a very manicured view. I say use that. You know, you can actually use that to your advantage. And I'm not saying posting sunsets. I'm saying you can pick and choose what the world sees. So if you want to make a career transition into some other field, you can actually show what you do in that field day to day.
Thank you for that. So my next question would be, whilst you're working on board, and I appreciate, Cameron, this may have been sort of a bit after your time, but did you ever feel distracted by news you received, which you wouldn't have received without social media? For example, some bad news at home, or even a personal issue, if you'd like to discuss. Did you feel distracted by that?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first on this one. Yes,
Yeah.
When I started at sea as a teenager, I was 16, and I joined commercial fishing trawlers in Australia. This was 2004, and so there was no real social media. We just had a little bit of phone range, and then it would disappear. Worked that distance offshore. I remember getting a text message that a family member had died, and then we immediately lost phone signal for about 2 weeks. So that was, that was like a really tough time to get phone signal for an hour, find out someone had died, and then lose it again for 2 weeks was horrible. I think that's probably less prevalent today, but that was an experience that I encountered.
Okay, so we do have a poll up, and I think it's being processed as we speak, but it'd be interesting to see what the audience feel like this, because I personally have had bad news received on board, and it has, I felt, distracted me. But as the chief mate say, Emily, how do you deal with that with your crew on board? Are you able to see it, or is it something that's hidden and you just sort of have to discover it by talking to other crew?
Well, I think the distraction of difficult news from home is always going to be a distraction, right? Like, I don't think it matters the delivery mechanism to which my seafarers receive this information, right? Emails from home, calls from home, a Facebook from home. That doesn't really matter. Like, now my family's in a hard time at home and I'm unable to help. That can affect your sailor's ability to focus on deck or focus on watch. More importantly, they're distracted, rightfully so. Like, my wife is pregnant with her baby and it's not going well, whatever the scenario is, right? So I think now I'm a manager, right? Like, now my seafarer is having a difficult time. You just have to be approachable or give them space. I think you'll kind of use your interaction with the seafarers and kind of know what they need, but sometimes the person knowing that you're there for them can help a long way. But since this is a social media webinar, I don't think that the delivery really matters too much. But so social media and being the ship's manager can sometimes be difficult to manage because there is a fine line, right? These are their personal accounts. Chances are I'm not really friends with them, and what they post is largely their business. So it's really important that if the social media policy of the operating company, that they're briefed on it when they come aboard the ship, if there's a training associated with it, and then that the sailor knows what they can post, maybe what they cannot post, what the rules are on board. Because without those clear guidelines, it's really hard for the sailor to know what the line is, especially where it's becoming more and more accepted and recommended and encouraged to share all parts of your personal life. So I think social media policies of companies can sometimes be really vague, and that sets everyone up for failure. What can I post? What can I not post? Because while more of the industry is becoming online, it's still very private and it's still very proprietary. And there's also a lot of protections to consider in terms of security. Where is the ship? Maybe don't post where the ship is. Maybe wait a week and be like, I had this great port call in the Philippines. It was so beautiful. But probably you shouldn't announce where the ship is going to be in a few days. You shouldn't announce where you are in the water. Like, all your pictures online, on the internet and the ocean all have a geotag, and chances are no one's going to do anything, but there's always that bad actor, and you just have to be careful. And as the chief mate, what is that fine line? But yeah, if you get bad news from home, you just have to be there for your sailors. That's pretty simple.
Well, that answered, sorry, Warren, to interrupt. That answered the question from Ferdinand there. He asked, what are the risks associated with social media used in the maritime industry, and how can these be mitigated? So again, I think security is probably one of the major points there, and just having good ship security and sort of personal security on where the ship is and what they're doing.
Yeah, I'd amplify what Emily said. I think, to summarize it in a sentence, I would rather get the bad news and not be able to do anything about it rather than not get it at all. And there once was a time where you just wouldn't get any news at all. I think most sailors, in my experience, are pretty resilient people. Most of them, I reckon, would rather get the bad news rather than just hear nothing.
Okay. Warren,
Right. Can I jump in? Thank you very much. Yeah, can I jump in on that one? Because recently I've been meeting with the shipping companies, and one of the best practices that they usually do is conducting like a family forum also on what are supposed to be the things they have to say when their sailor father or brothers are on board. So it goes along. I'm working with a crewing company right now. So we become in the crewing department. We become one of the mediator, the one that the crew has to ask what's already happening on their flight details or some things. But more importantly, we also have to take care of their mental health, especially if they hear such bad news. So what I'm trying to say here is that if there are shipping company executives in this webinar, it's time that we also educate our own family members, probably a family network, on how we can what do you call that, tell what are just the things that we're supposed to say on our crew, just so that they will not be distracted. And I know other companies are already doing that, but for those who are not here, so there.
Okay. Thank you, Warren. So we received a question, which could be quite controversial. How does social media affect rest hours on board? If you're on a ship without internet and you get within land, I'm sure, is it worth losing an hour of sleep just to get a bit of phone signal? What's your opinion on that?
For me personally, yes, it was. Sorry, unpopular opinion, but for me personally, yes, it was worth sacrificing rest to be connected.
And so what extreme would you go to? Are we talking, 3 or 4 hours? Because I, working on a cargo ship without internet, people would go to quite extreme lengths just to get that phone signal and just stay, scrolling Facebook or, whatever. And they find, they spend 2 hours and they've got to be up in 6 hours or, and at what point does that start impacting their operational capability?
Well, I remember just being like, when we got to anchor and when we got to phone range, I was on tankers. Didn't take it to extremes, but we didn't get phone signal in our cabins. So I would sit on the bridge for a little while and use the internet. It wasn't scrolling mindlessly, but I would definitely sacrifice sleep to be on the bridge using the internet.
Emily, would you like to take it away?
I have seen it. I've experienced it, having cell signal, even if, I'm in the Gulf of Mexico and I have signal from a rig, signal and internet is hope for sailors. They're like, maybe I can talk to my family again one last time before we do this whole crossing, right? And there's just something important about that I've noticed, and it's really positive. And everyone is an adult though. If you don't have to sleep in your bed. I'm obligated to give you your rest time, of course, but you don't have to sleep in your bed. And if you want to stay up and read a book or play a video game or watch a movie or be on social media with your signal of Facebook, that's your choice. That's on you. And if you don't sleep when you're supposed to be sleeping and now you're tired the next day, no one cares. It's the industry we're in. You made that choice. I'm not your mom. I don't think this is too much of an issue. If you're tired the next day, on watch, you're going to know, oh, I probably shouldn't have stayed up. But like, we are all adults, so I don't think it's too much of an issue.
That's a fair point. And for ships that do have this intermittent phone signal, would you say that the social life on board is affected when you do get that phone signal? Does everyone just go and run in their cabin and hide, or do they still socialize? You know, go to the wardroom, go to the crew bar if they still exist? You know, what's your opinion on that?
For experience, whenever there is signal already, crew tend to just go into their cabins. It has become their own comfort zones.
Okay, so do you think that's a positive or a negative? Because I feel if you're, you know, on board and you maybe don't have anyone to talk to, you may find that quite isolating. Sort of surrounded by people, but no one really to talk to.
Mm.
I think personally, you're just socializing with different people. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying just rather than socializing in the wardroom, you're probably socializing with the friends that you did college back, you know, back ashore.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think some things are being lost from the social aspects of wardrooms and such, but it's part of the digital transformation that we have.
Excellent. Well, we're almost there. Would you like to make some sort of final comments from yourselves on social media, any sort of tips and tricks as a final statement? If we start with you, Cameron, if you're happy to go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So my particular sort of thing that I was here to talk about was about how to make a career transition using social media, or how it can help you. So we don't have too long, so I'll just sort of be fairly brief. But my experience when I came back from sea, it was 2018, I stopped sailing, I started my law degree. I realized quickly that I knew no one in that industry at all. I had no connections. Lots of people I was studying with, you know, they had family in the law and such. I had nothing. So I decided to use social media, LinkedIn specifically, as a bit of a way to build a name and sort of meet people. It was quite successful, I suppose. I still use LinkedIn quite a lot. What I would say is amplifying what Emily and Wyron said earlier, keeping your LinkedIn profile up to date, keeping it like a resume. A good resume would be 2 pages. So don't make your LinkedIn profile huge. Don't put 26 different certificates in that section. Keep it like a CV would be. The more complete that it is, the more LinkedIn's algorithm likes it, and the more findable that you will be. But I do recommend having a LinkedIn page. The second thing is, if you want to position yourself as a person of expertise in a particular area, if you're looking for a job in, you know, maritime law, for example, you can start to build credibility with what you post online. There are, you know, we spoke earlier about you don't need to post. This is purely if you want to, but you can start to build credibility with what you write about. Position yourself as a source of expertise. The other thing I'd say is once you are comfortable doing that, I don't think it's a problem to express opinions if they're not controversial. So for example, you can write a post to say the Ballast Water Management Convention is coming into force on this date. The sort of more detailed post you could write is, here are 3 things I think the convention does well, and here are 3 ways I think it could be improved. Because the more you write this, the more your expertise gets developed. There's lots I could say on the technical side, but we'll gloss over that. Please feel free to contact me online. I can tell you what I've learned. The final thing, and maybe the most important thing, is if you're going to post, overcome that imposter syndrome. I will tell you honestly, it plagued me really badly. It's quite hard to put yourself out there online and put up photos and you know, things from my brain. It was, you know, it was really tough for ages. As still is now, but try and overcome that. The main person who is questioning your credibility is you. No one else is. And you know, I really encourage everyone to jump over that psychological barrier. If you do want to post things, back yourself, back your training and your expertise.
Thank you, Cameron. Some great points. Wyron, would you like to make some final statements?
Thank you very much. For me, I would have to say there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to social media. Probably what would have worked for us, the 4 of us, may not work for you, or probably you'll find that your area of expertise is in the short content, wherein TikTok or Instagram Reels will be more appropriate, or on the long post where LinkedIn is more appropriate. The key thing there is, as what Cameron has been mentioning, is that positioning yourself, branding yourself as someone who's able to vocalize their opinions. Although I'm speaking to the younger cadets here. You may not yet be the experts that you think you are. But then again, it's not that you don't know nothing. You're in the right position. You're fresh from college. You're fresh from the maritime trainings. So what have you learned from those? Key takeaways. Have you gone into a conference? Have you just finished your basic trainings? What are the things that you've learned in those? Those are good starting points. Or probably you've traveled on the first time on board your ship. Probably a short form reel or a talk video for that one. The final the end point that we're trying to do here, other than branding yourself as a professional, is attracting and retaining you in the maritime industry, be it seafaring or in the maritime law as Cameron is, or in the charitable organizations as mercy ships are, or probably professional organizations where the Nautical Institute is. So those are just some of my key takeaways for you guys. That's doable.
Excellent, thank you, Warren. And Emily, last but not least.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for having me be part of this. And as you both said, it's a good way to network, to have, if you use LinkedIn as a CV, for example, you just kind of have to find what works for you online. And it's not a requirement, though. If you want to be by yourself, if you like being a private person, this is still an industry where that is acceptable as well. You don't have to really post anything. You don't even have to have a LinkedIn, but here are some tools, here are some resources. And if nothing else, this webinar hopefully gets the conversation started for you and for the industry. And I hope this was beneficial.
Thank you for that, Emily. And from my side, on behalf of Emily, Warren, and Cameron, I hope you found this interesting. As Emily said, a bit of a conversation starter. Perhaps you can take this on board or talk amongst colleagues, and even find a job on LinkedIn. And as I was told when I started out, don't post something you wouldn't tell your grandparents. So on behalf of the Younger Members Council and Nautical Institute, thank you for your time today. Thank you for joining us. And keep your eye out for future webinars. We're trying to do a few more. Hopefully next year there'll be a couple more as well. So yes, thank you for your time and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.